Hello, I'm Teri Reynoso, the Circulation Supervisor at the Special Collections Branch of the Public Library of Albuquerque and Bernalillo County. I am not a native Burqueño, having been born and raised in Southern California. I am a graduate of the University of New Mexico, having obtained my undergraduate degree in history with a minor in cultural anthropology. I'm currently enrolled in the master's program in library science at San Jose State University with a specialty in archival studies and record management. I've worked for the public library for 7 years and at the special collections branch for 4. It's been my years at special collections that have sparked my interest in the history of Albuquerque, New Mexico. I should note, special collections has reopened. As with all the libraries in the city, we ask that you limit your visit to 15 minutes or less, but we are taking pre-scheduled appointments in 2-hour blocks. We'll pull all the material that you request and allow you time in a conference room to review it. Today is Sunday, October 18th, and I'm presenting this talk that was scheduled to occur on March 16th, 2020. Due to COVID-19 and Governor Lujan Grisham's restrictions on mass gatherings, I am presenting today via Zoom. "423 Central Avenue Northeast, a brief history." Before I get started, I should note all the images in my presentation are part of the library's archive or I took personally, unless otherwise noted. Today, we'll be talking about the history of this address, not the history of the library system, not the history of its staff, but the history of the northwest corner of Central and Edith. The history of this property dates back even farther than one would think. The history starts with the coming of the railroad. The railroad came to Albuquerque in 1880, and with it, a huge population boom of Anglos from the east. New Mexico was still a territory, and its infrastructure did not match the sudden growth in population. It became evident very early that there was a lack of education options outside those provided by the Catholic Church. This was a quote-unquote problem noted throughout the West. In response, the Congregationalist Church started the New West Educational Association, which established non-denominational education in areas of the West that lacked public schooling. Usually for a very nominal fee, these schools were classified as private education. In 1879, New West Educational Association started the Albuquerque Academy, very different from the academy we all know today. They started in Old Town and then moved to a few different locations in New Town. This is a report from the commission dated October 1889 that states how desperately a school was needed in Albuquerque. Please note number 3 on this list. The Catholic Church is well fortified in New Mexico and has been for 2 centuries or more. The results are as they are. The native people still rest in superstition and ignorance after training of 200 years. There is no other hope. Well, this report worked. The organization raised $22,000 to build a 3-story brick schoolhouse erected in 1890. The property for this purpose-built schoolhouse was donated to the New West Education Mission by the Albuquerque. Here's a picture of that building. According to the commission, the architects were Patton and Fisher of Chicago, and the contractors were Strong and Hasselton of Albuquerque. I could find no confirmation of this in the Albuquerque papers, but I did find a Strong and Hasselton in the 1892 business directory. So pictured here on the right is another picture, another building by Patton and Fisher, the Armor Institute in Chicago. So we have here our 3 windows on top, brick, then stone. We go back to the original building in Albuquerque, 3 windows on top, brick, and then stone. So I feel safe saying that these were, in fact, the architects. The building, alternately known as Perkins Hall or the Academy Building, was at the corner of Central, then known as Railroad Avenue, and Edith in the Huning Highlands addition, Block 13, lots 3 through 6. Unfortunately for the New West Educational Association, the Territory of New Mexico established free public schooling the following year in 1891. Quite quickly, the first academy, Albuquerque Academy, went out of business. They wanted to pay for something they could now get for free. The building was then rented out to the newly established Albuquerque Board of Education, and also the University of New Mexico for classrooms. You can see in this postcard, the formerly Albuquerque Academy is right here listed as the music school. In comes a man by the name of Joshua Reynolds to this story. Banker Joshua Reynolds came to New Mexico from Ohio via Colorado with his 2 brothers, all of whom were Civil War veterans. Joshua and his wife, Sarah, purchased the old Academy building in 1896. The Reynolds bequeathed the property to the city the summer of 1900 for the purpose of a library. There has been some who thought Reynolds was something of a Carnegie, donating land for a library. But as he purchased something that was already gifted from the city, there might have been some sort of legal ramifications involved. Here is a scan of the deed book for one of the lots outlining the changes in ownership. So we have here from the town of Albuquerque. It goes over here to the New West Educational Commission. Farther down from the society to Joshua Reynolds, and from Joshua to the city of Albuquerque. The deed of gift had several stipulations, 2 of which were: the city shall and will forever use and maintain said premises as and for a free public library. Please keep this stipulation in mind. We'll talk about it more later. And secondly, the city shall and will improve the grounds with trees and lawns and keep the said grounds and the buildings thereupon in repair and good condition forever. The Reynolds Free Public Library opened on the 1st of May, 1901, and our library system was born. The library was 1 floor of the former school building, with the other 2 floors still being rented out. Many churches held their services on the 3rd floor auditorium. Here are some pictures of the protected interior of the library. We don't actually know what the interior looked like, as we have no photographs of it or even descriptions of it beyond the size of the rooms. So we have here on the right, this is the 3rd floor with the assembly hall where church services were held. And this would be the 2nd floor that was the library. Here are some later pictures of the Reynolds Library. So this is from a postcard on the left, and this is from a photograph here on the right. And you can see the Reynolds Library is just on the edge of the frame, right next to the brand new built Albuquerque High. And please take a note of this clock tower, which contained the school bell from the original Albuquerque Academy. The clock has been lost to the ages. There was an article in the newspaper about it in 1924 asking what would become of it, but nothing else was ever said about the clock. But the bell was returned and is in the library today. And so it would remain for the next 20 years. As time passed, there was discussion of remodeling the interior and dedicating the entire building for library space. Here are some blueprints from 1921 of the projected remodel, including the addition of indoor plumbing, which it did not have before then. But the library board pushed for a purpose-built library instead of reworking the schoolhouse. A small fire slightly damaged the building in 1923, but that was the straw that broke the camel's back. The library board used this as an excuse to knock the Reynolds building down. Library lore and our tour once told of a blaze that razed the Reynolds building, lore that lasted until someone asked us for more information about the fire, and we couldn't find any. Besides this. This is an article from the newspaper of April 12th, 1923. These two notices were separate, but on the same page. Notice, the library will be closed until further notice appears in this paper by the city manager. City manager, Bert Calkins, is considering the employment of a watchman for the library because of the coincidence of 3 fires due to, quote, spontaneous combustion, unquote, within the last week. So we have this from our library archives of the circulation records from April 1923. And you can see right here, closed because of fire. Now, I don't know about you, but this whole situation sounds mighty suspicious. It should also be noted that Clyde Tingley was itching to get his hand on the exterior stone of the building. You can see right here in this picture. Clyde wanted this stone to build a new firehouse on High Street. And anyone familiar with Clyde Tingley knows that when Clyde wanted something, Clyde got it. So the building that housed the public library for 23 years was torn down, and Clyde Tingley got his firehouse. When it came to the design of the new library, there was much discussion. Many women of the library board wanted a near exact replacement of the first building. But it was Erna Ferguson that pushed for something different. Erna Ferguson, journalist, travel writer, tour guide, was among those who argued that the new library should be as much as an advertisement for New Mexico as the Alvarado and Franciscan hotels. Here's an article about that discussion. You can see here, an architectural style typical Southwest will be used for the new city library building. And then further on in the article, 33 of the women's 34 organizations represented in the Library Association favored the mission style. Mrs. E.S. Stover of the Parliamentarian Club stated that her organization opposes the mission style and prefers something more modern and pleasing to the eye. So Erna went out in the end, and the style of the building chosen was the Pueblo Spanish Revival. The brick from the Reynolds Library was reused to create the current building. It is brick covered with stucco to give the appearance of adobe. The designer architect of this building is still up for debate. Traditionally, the credit has been given to Arthur Rossiter. Recent discovery of the original blueprints of the building suggests it might have been Frank Kimball, city engineer. Currently, we're giving them both credit, and I do apologize, I do not have a picture of either of them. Arthur Rossiter was born in England in 1876. He immigrated to Massachusetts, where he met and married his wife, Grace. They had 2 children, Nellie Mae and Fred. Both children suffered from tuberculosis, and the family chased the cure, first moving to Pasadena, California, then here to Albuquerque in 1920. Arthur was not an architect and never referred to himself as one. In the city directories, he is listed as a, quote, designer and builder, unquote. 423 Central is his only building of note. By the mid-1930s, Rossiter left Albuquerque for Hot Springs, New Mexico. Frank Kimball came to Albuquerque from Texas following his service in the Army during World War I. He was the city engineer from 1920 to 1926. He also had a stint as an associate professor of civil engineering at the University of New Mexico. Frank was employed as an engineer for the State Highway Department, then the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District. By the mid-30s, he had begun working for the Soil Conservation Service and had moved to Maryland. Here are the blueprints of the building, with the notation that they are from the Office of the City Engineer. Please notice the absence of the side building that you can see here. Here is a picture of a house Rossiter designed in Pasadena in the 1910s. Please note the very familiar side room. So I leave it to you on who to give credit for the design of the building. During the construction of the new building, the collection was relocated twice. First, to the First Ward School, located on the corner of Edith and Terrace. The collection was there from July and August of 1924. It was then moved to the Central School at 221 West Led. It was here from October 1924 through February 1925, when the collection was placed in storage until the new library was complete. The first phase of the library opened on March 23rd, 1925. Included were the main reading room here, the adult reference room, and a basement that extended to the back third of the library. So back here was the basement. And though our address is now 423 Central Avenue Northeast, it hasn't always been. We started with the generic address of East Railroad Avenue in 1901. By 1908, we got a cross street. Our address was Northwest Corner, East Central, North Edith. It wasn't until 1947 that we got numbers associated with this address, 423 East Central. But the address as we know it today didn't come to us until 1983, which was surprising because the rest of the city had two-letter quadrants since 1951. The history of the building follows the patterns of Albuquerque history. 1901, the establishment of the library followed the railroad boom. 1925, building of the original portion of the library was concurrent with the arrival of tuberculosis patients and their families looking for healthier places to live. 1947, our first edition coincides with the end of the war and the advent of the national labs. 1951, our second edition coincides with the baby boom. In addition, the building has had two major renovations. The first renovation was 1977 to 1978. New Main was built downtown in 1975, and Old Main became Special Collections Library in 1978, housing collections focused on family history and the history of Albuquerque and the Southwest. Our second renovation came in 2010-2012. The genealogy collection was moved downtown to the main library, and Special Collections focus became the history and culture of Albuquerque and New Mexico. We will talk more about these additions and renovations as we travel digitally through the library. The main reading room. This was part of the 1925 construction. Here is a picture of the main reading room while it was still under construction, side by side with the current view. This up here on the left was a postcard that was distributed by all the trade unions that worked on the construction of the library. This postcard was distributed on opening day. And here is the library as it was pictured probably in February. You can see what has changed and what has remained the same. Most notably, the loss of the bookshelves on the bancos, which you can see here and here. Well, the building design is up to date. We know for sure the interior design was superintended by Gustav Baumann. It was reported on 18th of February, 1925, a little more than a month before opening, that Baumann had accepted the commission. This included the design of the furnitures and the interior paint designs. These chairs were designed by Baumann, but manufactured by the Breese Furniture Factory. The backs of the chairs were said to represent wind and rain waves. We have just 4 of these chairs remaining, and we keep them off display. Gustav Baumann's lasting contribution to the library would be his interior paintwork. This includes murals above the fireplaces and around the front door. The decorations on the posts, which you can see at the top here, and the design of the paint and the design of the paint wall. Here's a picture from the September 1925 issue of Architectural Digest, highlighting the fireplaces, quote, decorated with Indian designs, unquote. If you look on the front doors as you exit Special Collections today, you will see the unrestored signature of Gustav Baumann. Here is a picture of the original location of the circulation desk. This is the only known picture of the interior of the library before 1947. Pictured is staff member Elizabeth Kuntz sometime in the 1930s. Notice in this picture the original north wall with windows. You can see here. Here's a picture taken at approximately the same angle. So again, north wall, no windows. If looking back at this picture from Architectural Digest, you can see all the original bancos in the library. So these ones here flanking the front door are still intact, but we have lost these, the original counter, and then this one. They formed partitions to designate different sections of the library. So this was the children's room, this was the adult reading room, and the stacks were here. We lost most of them by 1949, but the ghost of them remain as seen in this picture. You can see the outline of where it was right here. The main reading room currently houses 3 paintings. The first is located on the east wall. The Erna Ferguson portrait was painted by physician Dr. James Carr and was painted from life. It was gifted to the Erna Ferguson Library, who in turn gifted it to Special Collections. We hang it on our wall due to the effort Erna put into making the library what it is today. Located on the north wall is Carl Reddin's Enchanted Mesa. It was rediscovered in the basement of Old City Hall in the 1950s. The original hung in the library from 1958 to 1975. The current version hanging in our reading room is a reproduction. When the main library opened in 1975, the fate of 423 Central hung in the balance. Again, more on that later. And the Reddin was transferred to the Albuquerque Museum. Our third painting is Fremont Ellis's The Old House at Chimayo. This was purposely painted as part of the WPA program. We have a copy of the letter from the WPA granting us this painting in 1934. The Ellis hanging at Special Collections is also a reproduction, the original being transferred to the Albuquerque Museum in 1998. Our current furniture also came to us through the WPA program, but not in the way we once thought. It was thought they came to us through this project from 1934. Quote, building additional oak furniture and remodeling public counter at Albuquerque Public Library, unquote. But while researching this talk, I found this picture. So there's the original Baumann furniture here. It's dark and you can see the chair. Some definitely not 1930s teenagers. And if you take a closer look, you can see the book My Friend Flicka here on the table, which was first published in 1941. This would have been right here, would later become the Bookmobile Driver in 1947. So we can only assume the new furniture came somewhere between 1941 and 1947. Though I couldn't find any paperwork regarding the chairs, they were mentioned in the 1977-78 renovation. They appear to have been built from WPA designs in about 1947. Looking back at that 1934 WPA project, we can see right here, 30 gallons of wall paint. We don't know for sure when it happened, but by 1949, the Baumann murals were painted over. You can see here. But luckily, the Baumann decorations were brought back in the 1977-78 renovation, the restoration done by Philip Marshall. They were restored based on photographs and scraping off decades of white paint to rediscover the original colors. Another item of note in the main reading room are the windows. The majority of the glass is original to the 1925 building. You can tell the original glass because of the wavy refraction when the light shines through it. The glass in these windows was water cooled. There has been much discussion on what the design of these windows is. Frank Lloyd Wright, Craftsman, Arts and Crafts, Prairie. I did a little research, but could not find any windows with this exact design. But they are designed exactly as they are depicted in the original blueprints. As additions were added to the building, the windows were reused and placed on the new exterior walls. You can see from this picture where the windows used to be. Other things of note in the main reading room are the Nancy Kolakowski rugs in front of the fireplaces, what came to us in the 1977-78 renovation, and the current chandeliers that were installed in the same renovation. They were modeled on the original light fixtures and replaced the previous mid-century modern lighting. So this is from the 77 renovation with the new light fixtures, and here's the original ones here. So the book and the press room. The press room is part of the library's original footprint, built in 1925. You can see that this door here has been transformed into interior windows. It was originally the adult reference, but this newspaper article states the children's room was moved here in 1935. It took them 10 years to realize how echoey the main reading room is and move those children over there to the side. The expanded children's room was part of the 1947 edition. It was funded by the passing of a library bond. The addition was completed by architect Gordon Ferguson and contractor O.G. Bradbury. Mr. Bradbury was chosen as the contractor as he submitted the lowest bid to the City Council. Here's a picture of the groundbreaking. This picture is kind of a library who's who. We got Mr. Bradbury here, the builder. Right here is your friend and mine, Clyde Tingley. Right here is Mrs. C.M. Botts, who we will hear more about in a little bit. This is my favorite librarian, who deserves her own talk of her own one day. That's Elsa Thompson. And here we have Gordon Ferguson, architect. This addition included a workroom, office, staff room, expanded the children's room, and added the back stacks and more basement storage. The wooden stacks were relocated to a new room added to the north side of the building. So again, we're going to look back at this picture of Elizabeth from the 30s with the north wall and the stacks right in front of it. Right here on the far right of the picture is the north wall, and then the wooden stacks in this new, very dark room. Not in any part of the tour, here is a picture of the addition of the basement storage as it appears now. Our basement houses some of our library history archive, but for the most part still remains storage. We keep duplication in the basement. Should any damage occur on the main floor, we have a second copy stored somewhere else. Here is a picture of the children's room during construction. You can notice a couple of things. First and foremost, how close our neighbors were. Look at how close this house was. This house is gone now, and it's a staff parking lot. But you can also notice the addition of this door. The children's room would now have its own entrance. This made the children's room a separate entity from the main library. It even had different operating hours. And children could not be in the main part of the library without an adult. Here is a picture of the children's room from 1949 when it was fresh and new. So when the main library was built in 1975, the children's room went with it. After the 77-78 renovation, the purpose of this space had to be reimagined. The Center for the Book was the brainchild of former director, library director Alan Clark, pictured here on the left, who was also behind the purchase of the Chemo Theater. So he did a lot for the city. But he wanted to keep children connected with the history of the written word and the history of printing. Center for the Book opened in 1983. The Center for the Book contains our antique book collection. These books, picked up for $5 or $10 or accrued by donation, have become a living timeline of the history of printing that spans the 16th through the 21st century. These books were purchased for the express purpose of being touched. We want children and adults to see the process that went into making a book, the craftsmanship. Alan Clark would visit book dealers across Europe and ask to see their junk. All these books have something wrong with them and wouldn't be in an interest to a book collector. The former entrance to the children's room is now our press room, which houses antique and reproduction printing presses. Also in the center for the book, we have 2 of our 4 examples of the 1% for the Arts program. Here is a mural by Diane Stetson. It is a visual timeline of the written word. And excuse the terrible pictures. This mural is painted on a semicircle and impossible to get in one photograph. There is also a bronze of Robert Louis Stevenson. The mezzanine. In November of 1956, the library was closed for about a month for remodeling. The original wooden shelving was replaced by mint green Mendel interchangeable shelving units. In addition, the mezzanine was added above the back stacks, which you can see in this picture from 1959. It gave us an upstairs. So here's our upstairs here. You can also note Enchanted Mesa hanging on the wall behind the circulation desk. These shelves and the mezzanine is what in use today. New MEXICANA. Remember me saying O.G. Bradbury lowballed the bid for the children's room edition? Well, as such, the library board demanded the difference from the city since the money came from a bond. And the library got it. Among other things, we got a new roof and a garage for the bookmobile. The garage was added in 1948 and was originally level with the alley Edith and Arno. You can see here in this picture, there's the garage sticking out the side of the room was later raised with later additions. It is now called the New MEXICANA room because the New Mexico History Collection from 1978 to 2010. Books currently on the shelves in New MEXICANA are our collection of fiction about New Mexico or written by New Mexico authors. Please note the table. Researching this talk, I found some information about it. During the 1977-78 renovation, 2 of the circular WPA tables were reworked into this oval conference table. The West Reading Room. This was part of a huge addition to the library that included gallery and auditorium space, the West Reading Room, storage room, an office space behind the New MEXICANA room, and the portico. Again, it was Gordon Ferguson of the architect firm Ferguson, Stevens & Associated that handled the addition. Here is a picture of the conception of the addition on the left from Gordon Ferguson, and a library bond bookmark with a slightly different conception. These editions opened on the 4th of March, 1991. Here's a layout of how the library appeared. Oh. Here is a layout of how the library appeared in 1964. The areas let me see. I will point out the areas that were part of the addition. So this area, I went too far. Sorry about that. Right here, work office was the addition. This office and this reading room here, this office here, the gallery, and the long fabled kitchen. We've heard about it in a lot of different materials about the library, but we never knew where it was. So I was very excited to find this rendering in a master's thesis from UNM. So going back, here is a picture of how the adult reference room looked when it opened in 1951. and how it looks today. At the time of the 1977-78 renovation, these windows here leaked very badly, and the 1970s solution was to brick them in. During the 2010-2012 renovation, one of our contractors rediscovered and reopened the windows. The books on these shelves represent about a quarter of the collection and are all duplicates. Again, the concept of keeping copies in different places. We call this our browsing collection. If we have a book on a topic in the West reading room, you can guarantee we have 5 more about it in the back. The West reading room also houses our map collection, including a donation from the city engineer. The 1977-78 renovation. As I mentioned, the main library reopened in 1975, and at that point, it was unclear what the future of this building would be. The old girl was beginning to show her age. As early as September of 1974, the Genealogy Club of Albuquerque, which met and housed their collection at the Erna Ferguson Library, suggested that Old Main house a genealogy and local history collection. But instead, the city decided to move the transit department into the building. Do you recall our original deed of gift? Stating that the city shall and will forever use and maintain the said premises as and for a free public library? Well, forever was shorter than anticipated. The heirs of the Reynolds family did step forward to remind the city, leading to a symbolic chaining of the doors until the city stated Old Main would remain a library. In June 1976, the City Council approved the idea presented by the Genealogy Club 2 years before. Botts Hall reopened, housing some of the genealogy collection, while a major renovation of the building occurred. The renovation was completed by Stevens, Mallory, Pearl, and Campbell, PA, construction done by Bill Stuckman Construction Company. This renovation included some things we've already touched on: the restoration of the murals, the installation of the replica light fixtures, plus wheelchair ramps, bookshelves closing off the back stacks, an elevator, which didn't exist in this 3-story building before. The metal front doors were replaced with wooden ones more reflective of the original doors. Bathrooms were also added to the main floor, which didn't exist before them as well. The public bathrooms were located in the basement down a dark and rickety staircase. Though both the bathrooms and the staircase were lost in the renovation, you can still see the ghost of these features hidden in a storage space today. So here's the original staircase. Botts Memorial Hall. Botts Hall was part of the 1951 addition. Here is it pictured following the addition of the portico. And this was very close to the opening in March, and you can see snow on the ground, but I guess it was a very, very cold winter because that's all the paper talked about. So Botts Hall was named for Clarence Milton Botts Jr. His father was a local judge and his mother was a member of the library board. C.M. Botts Jr. was a true son of Albuquerque. Born and raised here, he attended Albuquerque High, graduating in 1936. In our collection, we have one of his textbooks that he doodled his initials in. He attended 2 years at the New Mexico Military Institute before transferring to UNM. After graduating UNM, CM attended Harvard Law School, but he left Harvard when he was inducted into the Army in 1941. Lieutenant Colonel Botts was an airman who flew missions in the Pacific Theater. He was killed in action on the 16th of May, 1945. As quoted in his receipt of the Distinguished Service Medal, Lieutenant Colonel Botts' intrepid actions, personal bravery, and zealous devotion to duty at the cost of his life exemplify the highest traditions of the military forces of the United States. And as stated in this article of the dedication, Botts Hall is named not for just Lieutenant Colonel Botts, but all of the men who gave their lives. Botts Hall served a very important function for Albuquerque. At the time, there were no public gallery spaces nor any real meeting spaces for the city. Botts Hall functioned as an art gallery, a meeting room, and also at one time housed the performing arts collection for the library. Here is a schedule for Botts Hall from March of 1959. You can see how busy it was. And here's a picture of Botts Hall from the 1950s during a book fair. If you've ever been to Botts Hall, you can notice in this photograph the lack of a vestibule, which was added in the 2012 edition. Botts Hall also holds tapestries done by Nancy Kolakowski. The books in the East Cabinet are part of the Center for the Books collection. They are multiple editions of Don Quixote in many different languages. You can see the Braille edition here on the bottom shelf in blue. It runs 34 volumes. The 2010-2012 edition, renovation. Briefly, I want to discuss this renovation as a lot of the renovation happened here in Botts Hall. It was handled by Cherry C. Reams Architects, PC, and Crown Builders. Botts Hall had major acoustic additions added, including the treatments on the wall and the addition of that vestibule. The remodeling efforts in other parts of the library, quote, included some thermal improvements as well as power, data, and fire alarm upgrades to meet current codes and library functions, unquote. At this time, our mystery windows were also refurbished. To further quote their website, quotes, the city also wished for more water-efficient landscape design that was both respectful of the building and the neighborhood. The landscape had to fit into the surrounding historic context and be xeric enough to save on water usage and maintenance, unquote. But remember, the city, quote, shall and will improve the grounds with trees and lawns and keep the said grounds and the buildings thereupon in repair and good condition forever, unquote. That is why Special Collections still has grass, just a lot less than we had before. It was through a generous bequest to the library that we were able to complete the 2010-2012 renovation. This bequest came from artist and jeweler Tom Thomason. The courtyard. It is in our courtyard that we have our two other 1% for the art pieces. The first being the courtyard gates based on one of Tom Thomason's designs. The other being a statue called the Book Warden by Melissa Zink. It is a cast bronze like Rodin's Thinker. There are other copies in the statue in existence. The Book Warden is sitting on a former fountain that was added in the 1951 edition, and if it rains, still fills with water. The courtyard also holds the last bit of trivia about 423 Central Avenue Northeast. This is our jujube tree. This tree is a volunteer tree, meaning it was not planted but grew of its own accord. No one is sure when this tree took root, but it was not in any photos pre-1955. This jujube tree species was brought to Albuquerque in 1910, and at least a few were planted in Huning Highlands. A 2008 inquiry from a new UNM horticulturist suggests it might be the only remaining example of this type of tree in Albuquerque. I leave you with my very favorite image of 423 Central Avenue and give you thanks for your time today. Okay, I'm gonna open up the chat and see if there's any questions that I can answer. So, let's see. I didn't know that the bell was in Special Collections. It is. Unfortunately, that 1951 portico edition kind of hid it from view. So you can see it if you're across the street or if you're standing in the courtyard. I could tell you now, I'm not a fan of the portico edition, but it's from 1951 and now it's historic, so I'm stuck with it, I guess. I presume Mrs. O.A. Baccielli is the wife of Ores Baccic. I'm sorry, I'm totally naming these names, who built the chemo. I'm not sure, but I would assume so because that's a very unique name, and I think he was the only one in Albuquerque. When was Botts Hall added? In 1951. And yeah, that's all the questions I have. So if there were any other questions, I would be happy to answer. We'll give it a moment because I know there's a delay with Facebook Live. I hope one day to have again this tour live and in person. So my coworkers like to joke with me, stating that I never give the same tour twice, which is true because it just depends on what pops in my head. To Kathleen and Kathy, you're welcome. What else can I say about special while I'm waiting? It is a very unique place to work, and I am honored to tell the story of that building. There's so much I left out, but I had to limit it to 45 minutes. Soon after the addition of Botts in 1951, the roof leaked. It became so bad that the roof actually came crashing into an art display in the brand new gallery. But that was a really long and dramatic story I couldn't include. Maybe if you come for a tour, I'll talk about it. It was a exhibit on dolls that got destroyed, and there was insurance issues in the city and the builder, and there's a lot of finger pointing. I think that's it. Maybe questions? Thank you for your time again today. I appreciate it. Thank you, Janet. Let's see, what are we working on at Special? I could talk about that. So we are working on a new digitization project at Special Collections in partnership with the University of New Mexico Special Collections and Center for Southwest Research. We're working to digitize and index a tuberculosis magazine from the 1910s, 1920s called the Kilgloom Gazette, later called the Herald of the Well Country. So it started as a gag magazine for patients at the Methodist Sanitarium, and gradually turned into almost a promotional magazine for Chasing the Cure in Albuquerque. It's the silliest magazine, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to sharing more about that in the future when I'm done researching that project. Chat says there's more, so I'm standing by. Okay, we got a question. How do children and adults view the Center for the Book now? So again, right now is kind of different than normal, as we all know from the Zoom presentation. If you just want to come by the library, it's normally open. Unfortunately, Center for the Book is, we jokingly call Center for the Chairs, because all the seating that we moved out of the main reading room are now in Center for the Book. So I don't recommend coming by the library now to view it, but normally just coming by and you could see it. Yeah, if there's something special you want to see, or the press room, we'd be happy to set up an appointment for you to come and do that. We'd be glad to. Yeah, because I don't know if you can tell, I love talking about this library. And in person's even better because I love to answer questions live. Yes, this talk I started for our 95th birthday, which passed this March when the library was in fact closed. So we were talking about how we'll celebrate the 100th, which is just 5 years away, and almost 4 now. But yeah, I'm thinking 1920s, flappers, band, party. Yeah, I think a lot of things, but that doesn't always mean that they happen. Let's see. No further questions. And also with Center for the Book, we do normally offer class visits. So we've been recently been working with charter schools and homeschool co-ops to come visit Center for the Book. And if you do, we say if you got 5 kids and bring them in, we'll do something. But we have a volunteer named Bill Farmer, who is a wonderful gentleman that actually runs one of our printing presses and allows the children to print. And then we have a bunch of other things that we can offer and show children when we educate them. We can talk about Braille, we can talk about typesetting. Oh, the classic favorite thing from class visits is pulling out the typewriter. Yeah, kids don't know how that works, and they're so mesmerized. My favorite thing is when they're clacking away and they say, "How do you backspace?" I'm like, "Oh, honey, there's no backspace." And their kids are also very gentle on the typewriter. And I tell them, "You're not going to break it. You got to mean it when you type." And they get very nervous to use any sort of force with it. But that is the favorite thing. We have another question about the city acquiring the land east of special collections for parking. Yeah, you are asking the wrong person. I don't know. Last I heard, it was already purchased, but I don't know, and I can't say. So yes, another thing I like to joke with people that come into the library is we do not have any public parking. It's metered only, or the vacant lot that used to be the Pop and Taco. But I used to joke, yeah, well, when the library was built or acquired in 1901, they weren't thinking about automobile parking. There was a lovely horse hitch out front that is in some of the pictures, but the original building didn't even have electricity. So yeah, it's been a problem that is just not solvable. Let's see, or at least by me. Standing by for more questions. See any more trivia about the library? It's not haunted. A lot of people will ask that. It's a 95-year-old building that makes a lot of pops and creaks and groans and has very weird acoustics. You can hear people talking outside, so don't ever gossip outside Center for the Book or the press room, because we can hear you in the main room. Let's see, what else can I say about that building? We've teamed up this past summer, not this summer, but 2019, with our STEM division of the library to try, because we're always trying to bring kids into that building. And this past summer, not this one, the one before, we outside made a very big mess and made paper. And that was a lot of fun. Okay, asking if there will ever be a virtual tour of Center for the Book. I hadn't thought about it, but absolutely, I could do that. Center for the Book has so many treasures, and I submit a lot to Facebook and Instagram of the ABQ Library to post. And you might, if you don't follow either of those sources, please do, because I'm putting a lot of content on because not a lot of visitors due to COVID, so we're doing a lot of digital content. But I certainly can talk to our digital services and see if we can do a little tour. Center for the Book contains a Braille book collection. It contains a miniature book collection. We have the complete works of Shakespeare, and it's probably about this big. What else is in there? We have a pop-up book collection, because you think book construction, art, stuff like that. A lot of Center for the Book has its own closet, and there's a lot of mystery in that closet, and there's a lot of things we can go through and visit virtually. I would love to do that. So yeah, please follow us on Facebook, the library, and on Instagram, because I'm submitting a lot of content for posting, but I think they might be tired of me now because I submit a lot, but it's fun. I mean, it's 90, the library has been in this building since 25. So, I mean, 95 years of that building, and then the 23 before. There's a lot of things to share in that building. So waiting on more questions. Let's see, what else can I say about the building? I don't know if you guys noticed in the one picture of the basement, like our reading room is gorgeous, beautiful, high ceilings. And then the rest of the library, the ceilings, I'm only 5'4" and I can touch the ceiling with my hands. It's very low, old from the 25 building. Okay, doesn't look like there's any further questions. So again, thank you so much for watching today. I appreciate it. Oh, I should take my glasses off. I was reading, I had to have my glasses on. Please don't forget to support the library with our bonds on November 3rd, where there's 2 on the ballot. Also, you know, please don't forget our library. Your library is open and active for library usage. So 15 minutes is longer than you think. Go in, pick some books. Also use our digital resources, ebooks, e-audiobooks online. If you ever have some difficulty with those, you know, call me at Special Collections. I have the time to sit there and walk you through it. I don't mind. I've had to do a lot of that as well. And I was briefly working at the Central Unter branch and had to be re-immersed in a circulation branch's policies and procedures, but it's all fresh in my brain. Oh, well, I'm going to take a